welcome to Community Church Unitarian Universalist virtual Easter service. It is a joy to be with you in whatever form on this Easter morning. We hope wherever you are gathered that you have joy. Now, at Community Church Unitarian Universalist, we are a progressive, open-minded, and inclusive religious community. We welcome all who are on a spiritual search for truth and meaning. Ours is a faith in action as we do the work of social justice and elevate compassion in our quest to live ethically, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every being. So each week we recently have sent out to our members updates about all that is happening, not only at Community Church Unitarian Universalist, but how we can help and support our larger New Orleans community and the world at this time. If you are interested in signing up for our Community Matters newsletter, please go down on this Facebook page, down a little bit, and click on the link to put your email address into our newsletter, or go online to www.ccuunola.org to sign up. So with that being said, I wanted to lift up a few announcements on this Easter Sunday. One is that directly after this service, our amazing Time for All Ages with Religious Education Director Cynthia Ramirez will be on Facebook. So she'll be going live right after this. Please join her as she makes cascarones, which are the Easter eggs with the confetti inside that each year, and I really miss it, this year I'm going to miss having an Easter egg with confetti smashed on my head for good luck. So we're making one this afternoon. We hope you all will join Cynthia as well in this tradition. And at 12:30, after that, we're going to be having our virtual coffee hour again, hosted by our CCUU president, Dion DeVille. So we ask that you join us for shared community. Members and friends received an invite in our weekly Community Matters newsletter. And again, if you look down on this Facebook page, you will see the invite to that Zoom coffee hour. It is Zoom. We're getting used to Zoom, but it's a wonderful way for us to connect. Speaking of Zoom, we have a Zoom tutorial this week for anybody who would like, Wednesday at 4 p.m. Again, the invite in our newsletter. You can reach out to office@ccuunola.org. I probably know just about as much as the rest of you, but it's a good way to get us started so we can continue to connect. I so appreciate all those individuals that are working to learn this new technology and new way of being together. Speaking of being together, even when we're apart, I just want you to know that an Easter bunny, i.e. Bunny DeVille, has hid some sanitized eggs around Community Church UU. So if you're on a walk near our church, you may find some surprises. So with that, let us begin our Easter worship. Well, hello there. So I come to you today briefly in my floral apparel because though we Unitarian Universalists with Christian roots will be primarily discussing Easter in its Christian context, I also want to honor what came before Easter and what remains for some today, which is a pagan festival marking the spring equinox. It's filled with fertility and life. So today is also a celebration of spring. And just because we can't leave our homes doesn't mean we can't celebrate life and color and humor and fabulousness. So here I am in my fertile, flowery self this morning. I encourage all of you to find some physically distanced joy today, whether it's in wild Easter bonnets, cascarones, in-house Easter egg hunts, delicious Easter meals, or even a bunny hop. And so our first reading today by Billy Collins, called Today, seems particularly fitting. even if we may have some storms later in the day here in New Orleans. My goodness, we are used to those by now, literal and metaphorical. So today, if ever there were a spring day so perfect, so uplifted by a warm, intermittent breeze, that it made you want to throw open all the windows in the house and unlatch the door to the canary's cage, indeed rip the little door from its jamb. A day when the cool brick paths and the garden bursting with peonies seemed so etched in sunlight that you felt like taking a hammer to the glass paperweight on the living room end table, releasing the inhabitants from their snow-covered cottage so they could walk out, holding hands and squinting, into this larger dome of blue and white. Well, today is just that kind of day. So may you throw open your windows and your heart on this Easter Sunday. As we do each week in our Unitarian Universalist tradition, we light our chalice. And today we're going to have a different kind of chalice lighting. And I'm going to wait for my chalice lighting assistant, as we have each week. We like having one of our youth and young adults lead. And because of this physically distant time, that youth and young adult, for the third week in the row, is Sebastian Roque Van Young. So as he comes...
I'm a kid.
Yep, come on forward, Sebastian. And can you come on up and light our chalice? Oops. Come on. We're going to have an assist here. And as we light our chalice, I'm going to read our chalice lighting from Dillman Baker Sorrells for Holy Days. For holy days on which we recall the old stories, we light the flame. For Passover, which reminds us of the courage and strength of those seeking freedom in the past, we light the flame. For Easter, which reminds us that love is our greatest challenge, we light the flame. For gathering today in this sacred space, wherever we are, we light the flame. For the opportunity to be together as a community, to remember the past, to plan for our future, but most importantly, to be alive, to be special, and to be alive in our present. We light our flame. Now please join us for hymn 61, Lo, the Earth Wakens Again. each week in our Unitarian Universalist community, we lift up all the joys, even our physically distanced joys that we have had this week, all that brings us life in this time of spring. We also lift up and hold each other in our sorrows, and we know at this time there are many. And so what we do in this now virtual time is, as you are willing and able on Facebook, please write in any joys or sorrows in our Facebook post now, and I will read them aloud after our beautiful solo by Bennett Britt. And I will light some candles so that you know that even if we are apart, we are not alone. Now is our time for joys and sorrow. So we are lighting some candles today for so many members of our community. I want to lift up Ed Buckner, who is back at home recovering from a stroke. He sends his love. As many of you know, at Community Church Unitarian Universalist, Ed is a beloved friend of our church and the founder and leader of the Red Flame Hunters, an all-youth Mardi Gras Indian tribe that we are closely aligned with and have had partnerships with for years. He is recovering, and he deeply appreciates the love that you are sending his way. Irfan Saeed and the entire Saeed family is thankful for family and virtual community on this holiday. It is good to virtually see you all. Marilyn Malone asked that we light a candle for her friend Jim Hamilton, who has just had a heart implant. We light this candle as well. Also, Marilyn has a joy. Alan Malone, another beloved member, is starting to write another novel. It's wonderful. I cannot wait to read it. Sean Lote says, this is Sean. I am thankful for the continued weeks at home with Tanya, Amelie, and Julian, and more to come. There is an ask for love and strength. There is an individual whose daughter is now suffering the effects of COVID-19. This is getting hard. Dion DeVille writes, prayers that we get through tonight's storms with no flooding and minimal damage. Everyone be safe and careful, please. Naomi Hill is thankful for our health, family, friends, and Costco via Instacart. Stacy Seafelt notes that her littlest one had a high fever this week, and they are hopeful that he is on his road to recovery and the rest of our family stays healthy. We send our love and prayers and light your way. I light a candle too, virtual candle, for all the beautiful names I see gathered here today in this community, locally and across the country. You are seen and loved. Thank you for continuing to connect on this Easter Sunday. And we light 2 more candles. One candle for all the joys that are perhaps unexpected at this time, that are bubbling up even in our homes and in our lives in a difficult time. And of course, for all the sorrows that have been spoken and unspoken. Please know again that even though we are apart, we are not alone, and that you are loved. Let us have 1 minute of silence. Our second reading today is from Paulo Freire, an excerpt from Pedagogy of the Oppressed. The oppressor is solidaire with the oppressed only when he stops regarding the oppressed as an abstract category and sees them as persons who have been unjustly dealt with, deprived of their voice, cheated of the sale of their labor. When he stops making pious, sentimental, and individualistic gestures and risks an act of love. So at Community Church Unitarian Universalist, I hope we often risk acts of love. I think we do. I think we often challenge ourselves to take that risk as well. And so that you know, Community Church Unitarian Universalist is a self-sustaining congregation, meaning that members and friends' generosity help us do the sacred work of bringing justice and spirituality and compassion to our community and beyond. We do this in so many ways. It is in the partnerships we forge, the relationships we build, the work we do in the larger community, and the work we do for ourselves in this community to grow spiritually, morally, intellectually. And so we ask in this time, thank you for all that you're giving right now, and the masks that you're sewing, in the people that you're connecting with, in the ways that you're being, and yes, in your financial support. It helps us continue to keep going. So you can give online at www.ccunola.org/stewardship. You can give by text. We're getting high tech here at 504-370-2659. Text GIVE to be prompted to make your donation, and you'll see it in the Facebook comments here. Or you can send us a check, an old-fashioned check at our church address that is on our website, www.ccunola.org. We will leave you some time to reflect and give as you feel willing and able, as we hear another solo from Bennett, our music director. Mark chapter 16, verses 1 through 8, the resurrection of Jesus. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome brought spices, so they might go and anoint him. And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. They had been saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb?" When they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled back. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe, sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. But he said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He is not here. Look, there is the place they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." So they went out and fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. And all that had been commanded them they told briefly to those around Peter. And afterward Jesus himself sent out through them, from east to west, the sacred and imperishable proclamation of eternal salvation. Empty churches, empty tombs, overfilled hospitals and cramped homes, blooming flowers and talk of death on everyone's lips. What an unusual, contradictory Easter. Or is it really? Because in truth, seeming contradictions like death and rebirth is one of the central pieces of this Holy Week story from over 2,000 years ago. From Jesus' entry into Jerusalem last Palm Sunday, through to his betrayal by Judas on Wednesday, his last supper with the disciples on Thursday, his execution on Friday, and eventual resurrection today. That is quite a week. Now, Jesus' death should be, but isn't always, particularly heartbreaking for us Unitarian Universalists, many of whom do not believe in the physical resurrection of Jesus, because it is the end to this incredible man and teacher's life. And for us UUs who do not believe in the physical resurrection of Jesus, a birth still comes out of this story, even if it is not salvation for humankind. the birth of a religious tradition, one of the most powerful in the world today, Christianity. A religious tradition in which we Unitarian Universalists find our theological roots. And a religious tradition, like most, I'm going to say all religious traditions, that holds its own contradictions. A tradition that has brought meaning and courage to so many in justice work, in dignity, and in spiritual sustenance. And a tradition, too, that has robbed so many of their lives, of their full selves, of their freedom. Death and life, life and death. So in this spring Easter pandemic sermon, with so much going on and so much seeming contradiction, I hope to uncover some small bud, bulb, essence of this story, so that we can better acknowledge and better experience what the roots of this story teaches us, and how it challenges us all. So that's why, for our Easter biblical reading, unlike years past, we are simply using the simple, stripped-down ending of the Gospel of Mark. Now, the Gospel of Mark is actually the oldest of the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that tell the story of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection. The OG, original Gospel, if you will. Mark was written around the time of the Romans' destruction of Jerusalem, 70 CE. That was years before the other Gospels put pen to parchment. But ironically, this original Gospel is often ignored, disregarded, particularly by Christian conservatives, because the Gospel of Mark does not give definitive proof of Jesus' divinity in birth or in death. So the beginning of the Gospel of Mark posits no virgin birth for Jesus. It doesn't even discuss his birth at all. Then there's the abrupt ending of the Gospel of Mark that we just read. The women come to prepare his body for burial on this Sunday, and Jesus has simply disappeared. Some guy, a young man, is sitting there and tells the women that Jesus has already been resurrected, is already on the way to Galilee. We are told in prologue that Jesus' message is sent out to the world from east to west. And that's it. Now, as you might imagine, that didn't sit well with some Christians who wanted a bit more proof. A longer ending was later added to Mark and included in the remaining Gospels, noting Jesus' multiple miraculous sightings by his disciples and women at the tomb before he descended to heaven. All right, so why am I telling you all this? Well, for religious nerds, scholars like me, these nuances, discrepancies, hold a world in and of themselves. Unlike Jesus' tomb or our churches, these Gospels are never empty. They are filled with a multitude of meanings, wanting to not only be examined, but experienced. And in this case, is it not telling that the earliest followers of Jesus, the writers and hearers of the Gospel of Mark, did not demand ironclad proof of Jesus' divinity and resurrection, that Jesus' works and life, which included miracles, of course, were enough. His birth and death need not be miraculous to recognize the miraculous vision he cast and the sacred work that he did. An exemplar of true compassion, equity, advocacy, and love. From healing the sick, to overturning money changers' tables, to calling for a world where the last shall be first, and the first shall be last. That statement from the Gospel of Matthew already seems otherworldly, because none of us truly has lived into that ideal. And this year has proven to be the literal embodiment of that failure. Because in comparing this ancient story of death and resurrection, which is bodily indeed, we as a society have failed so many human bodies, aching and in need of care today. For example, In Louisiana alone, Black people make up 70% of the deaths in all known coronavirus patients, while accounting for just 32% of the population. As Dr. Joya Creer-Perry, president of the National Birth Equity Collaborative, notes, this stunning statistic is a reflection of the lack of access to insurance over the years, a lack of access to having medical care, and also the gaps that we see in our social safety net in Louisiana. Dr. Creer-Perry later emphasizes that health disparities or health inequities are not because people are making bad choices or because we have bad genes. They are because we have had policies that devalue groups of people for generations. Now, the coronavirus is exposing all of that. And so, in today's context, the stone has been rolled away from the tomb to expose years of racist, inequitable health care for so many of our citizens. A lack of care, and let's be honest, more truthfully, a lack of caring. Black liberation theologian Dr. James Cone, in his brilliant and brutal work, The Cross and the Lynching Tree, compared those two symbols as one, the cross, as a universal symbol of the Christian faith, the other, the lynching tree, as the quintessential symbol of oppression in America. Though both are symbols of death, one represents a message of hope and salvation, while the other signifies the negation of that message by white supremacy. As he continues, many Christians embrace the conviction that Jesus died on the cross to redeem humankind from sin. Taking our place, they say Jesus suffered on the cross and gave his life as a ransom for many. The cross is the great symbol of the Christian narrative of salvation. Unfortunately, during the course of 2,000 years of Christian history, the symbol of salvation has been detached from the ongoing suffering and oppression of human beings, the crucified people of history. The cross has been transformed into a harmless, non-offensive ornament that Christians wear around their necks. Rather than reminding us of the cost of discipleship, it has become a form of cheap grace, an easy way to salvation that doesn't force us to confront the power of Christ's message and mission. For me, it's a message and a mission that was grounded in Jesus' embodied reality. So it's of a man of Middle Eastern descent who called for a radical transformation of society, often through healing touch, embodied advocacy, and yes, anger, whose very life was ended through his own brutal execution. Again, if we Unitarians are to take this story and its message seriously, then we must reckon with all that reality, all that death. We can no longer deny that suffering in our world today. In the Gospels, the disciple Peter denies Jesus 3 times after his arrest. I wonder how many times we, often privileged in our culture, deny other people's struggles, other people's humanities, the violence inflicted on other people's bodies, whether by lynching or inequitable health care. It's hard. It's complicated. It's perhaps all too human to recognize this suffering and respond. But this Easter, I ask us to not turn away from death, from suffering, from inequity. That we recognize that Jesus' empty tomb does not mean all is well, that we are somehow freed from responsibility by his resurrection. If anything, we UUs are like the folks in the shorter ending of Mark's gospel, tasked with actually trying to live Jesus' values in our lives, bringing justice, equity, compassion to the larger world, even if we don't always see and experience the miraculous or traumatic in our daily comfort. Reverend Darcy, you may be asking, can you get to the birth part of this sermon? Where is the hope? Or even some joke about Easter candies. Peeps are my favorite. That's not a joke. It's coming, I promise. Because for us largely privileged Unitarian Universalists, our spiritual rebirths come from each step we take toward recognizing the reality of white supremacy and inequity in our culture. In this recognition, we can start taking steps toward our full humanity, away from denial and into recognition of our fellow human beings' unjust suffering, learning to be fully alive, fully human, by not only recognizing other folks' full humanity, but participating fully in shared resistance to systems that deny anyone's humanity. From the Louisiana prison system that is currently holding incarcerated folks and undocumented immigrants in detention facilities rife with COVID-19, to longstanding inequities in our healthcare system that are only amplified by this pandemic, we can resist this dehumanization in advocacy now and in the future. Let us recognize, too, all that is emerging this spring. All this suffering might possibly, if we are able to stay with some of this suffering, help some of us better recognize what is life-giving. That the community we miss in New Orleans, a community that often, but not always, represents the beautiful diversity of this unique place, is far more life-giving than our individual isolation, no matter how nice our living rooms. That the bird calls that we hear more frequently, the animals that are roaming a little more widely in our streets, are emerging because we have left our cars at home, our airplanes grounded, factories stalled. That recognizing a shared humanity, in rolling back the stone of inequity and staying allied with that shared pain, even when some of our own comforts will return, will be what brings us into a new way of living, a new way of being alive, a shared fight for an equitable system that, yes, will be hard to build, but will truly provide a stronger and more lasting foundation for us all, a fruitful blossoming for each of us, from roots to stem. Easter will come each year. After all, it's based in a pagan festival marking the spring equinox. Sorry, I'm blaspheming again. But each year hopefully brings a new lesson, or even a new understanding of a lesson that we're going to have to learn again and again and again. A rebirth that follows our own holy journey, our own holy week, seemingly never ending. In this time, we must walk into and through some pain, not as some exercise in masochism, but as a recognition of being fully alive and connected, even if our own immediate concerns are not about staying alive or making rent. We must remember this time as one in where so many people failed us, the federal government for one, and so many people saved us too. Doctors, nurses, advocates, those who have stepped outside themselves to save lives. No one savior, presidential candidate, person, no matter how divine or charismatic, can save us. But we can save each other. We can save ourselves. If we remember, if we organize, if we recognize that we are the people of Mark's gospel too, scared, alone, traumatized, and holding the dream, the vision of what could be possible if everyone was treated with the inherent worth and dignity that we all deserve. We can recreate our world, and we can rebirth ourselves. It will take all of us. Amen. benediction today is from Victoria Weinstein, Being the Resurrection. The stone has got to be rolled back from the tomb again and again every year. Roll up your sleeves. He's not coming back, you know. He's not coming back unless it is we who rise for him. We who lay healing hands on the reviled and rejected like he did on his behalf. We who rage for righteousness in his insistent voice. We who love the sinner, even knowing that the sinner is no farther off than our own heartbeat. He will not be back to join us at the table to share God's extravagant banquet, God's love feast. All are invited, come as you are. And so it is you and I who must feast for him. Must say the grace and break the bread and pass it to the left and dish up the broiled fish or pour the wine and pass it to the right. And treat each one so tenderly, as though just this morning she or he made the personal effort to make it back from heaven or from hell, but certainly from death, to be by our side. Because if by some miracle, and why not a miracle, he did come back, wouldn't he want us to see us like that? Wouldn't it be a miracle to live for just one day, so that if he did, by some amazing feat, come riding into town, he would take a look around and say, "This is what I meant." And we could say, "It took us a long time, but we finally figured it out. Oh, let us live to make it so. You are the resurrection and the life." Amen. Blessed be. Go in love. And happy Easter.
Hello, everybody. I'm sorry, it was getting pretty crazy. Anyways, I hope I'm on. I can't tell. Happy Easter, everybody. I hope everybody can see me. Um, I have my Easter dress on and I have my bunny ears. I just want to wish everybody a happy Easter. That was a lovely sermon. I hope everybody enjoyed that. Very inspirational. Today I'm going to be reading a story about Easter. It's a little different Easter thing here. And it's called Spring Surprise. Squirrel go, sparrows go, cheep, cheep. The mouse or the mice go, squeak, squeak. Frogs go, ribbit. Knee-deep tadpoles go, ribbit, ribbit. The grass goes, ooh. The pond goes, plip, plop. Peepers go, peep, peep, peep. The nighthawk goes, ee, ee. Daffodils nodding back and forth. It wasn't a particular hard winter that year, but it was long and dreary and colorless. No wonder then that when the first winds of March blew warm breath across the land and the land began to green, the wild creatures on 4 foot and on wing took notice. The first creature, small brown mouse, sat back on her haunches and smelled the warm air. She knew what this meant. The green time was coming, and the first small shoots of grass were tasted so very good and would begin to show themselves. Ah, sighed the small brown mouse, tender grass to nibble on and to line my nest for my babies. The small brown mouse was not the only creature glad to smell spring in the air. The fuzzy-tailed squirrel scampered to and fro, up and down the trees. He paused a moment to watch a sparrow and her mate make work on their nest. Mrs. Sparrow wanted to line the nest with soft lint and grass in a particular way. Mr. Sparrow was getting tired of her bossing, and soon he flew off and hid behind a daffodil, which was nodding in the breeze. Fuzzy-tailed Squirrel shook his tail and scampered off. He remembered a spot where he had hidden a particularly juicy horse chestnut. He hoped that the little brown mouse had not found it. High above head, the nighthawk surveyed the land. His favorite tree was still there, and his neighbor, fuzzy-tailed squirrel, was there too. He passed his winter far to the south, but he was always glad to return to his home. The trees were all fuzzy and green with baby leaves, and the flowering trees were bright with colored petals. And over there were the daffodils nodding and waving to him. The warm spring sun shone down upon the land, upon the grass that glowed with green vigor, upon the little brown mouse as she put the finishing touches on her nest, and upon the daffodils too. The sun gave warmth to the wings of the nighthawk as he soared upon the wind and beamed upon the sparrow family as they worked a bit more cooperatively this time on their nest. The sun beamed at the fuzzy-tailed squirrel as he scampered about. It even glittered upon the pond far below. Down in the deep quiet of the pond, where the water never quite froze, even in the deep midwinter, the warmth of the sun began to heat the water until suddenly the frogs popped out of the winter mud nests. Tadpoles began to swim in the sun-warmed pond, and they dreamed of jumping high into the air to see the grass at the edge of the world. The peepers joined the chorus, and the pond added music to the colors of spring. And there in the musical, colorful world, where the grass was green and the daffodils nodded in the breeze, where the tadpoles dreamed and swam in warm waters of the pond, and where fuzzy-tailed squirrels scampered in the grass as the nighthawk settled into his tree while the sun shone on down. The little brown mouse had her babies. The sparrows laid 4 eggs, and what had been the promise of spring became the fulfillment of it. So that's what this time of the year is about. It's about renewal, whether it's the natural environment, your spiritual renewal, whatever your belief system is. It's all about this renewal. Anyway, so I'm going to talk a little bit about, I think I sent out the parents something about the cascarone because it's that time of year. So let me give a brief history of what cascarones are, since some people may not. I know the children and most of the church know what they are. So let me just read a little bit about what they are. So you may see around this time, Easter time, you see children as well as adults running around with their colored eggs in their hands, which they smash or they explode with confetti onto the heads of their desired target. These are called cascaroni, or we call them confetti eggs. The idea was first seen in Asia and later brought to Italy by the explorer Marco Polo. The eggs were often given as gifts and were filled with perfumed powder. The custom then traveled to Spain and was later brought to Mexico in the mid-1800s by the Emperor Maximilian's wife. It was in Mexico that the perfume powder was replaced with confetti. The word cascarón comes from the Spanish word cáscara, which means eggshell. In interior Mexico, one often sees these colored eggs thrown at festivals during Carnival, just before Lent. While you may see cascarones on the Carnival celebrations in the U.S., it is more common to see them during Easter. This is because, like many other Latin traditions, there has been a merging with the U.S. holiday tradition of dyeing hard-boiled eggs. Having one broken over your head is said to bring good luck. So, my family in South Texas does this. It is most fun, and I was introduced to it when we would go down to Texas, and I didn't know much about it until one day. It was an Easter holiday, and we went down there, and all my cousins like, oh, like they were coming to hug me, and I was, oh my goodness, I'm loved. And so they came up, and in the guise of hugging you, they would come, and then they smash it on your head. You're like, what's going on? But, the idea of it brings you luck, but also is that you're loved. This whole idea of family at this time. So let me show you some of these. They're fun. It's fun to run around and everybody's just covered with confetti. So here's my little scary basket. Okay, oops, there you go. And these are cascarones, right? I think I sent some to you. And basically it is, you hollow out the egg, right? And as you can see, the top, you take the top off and you pour out, there's very many, you can do it the regular way, like you pop the holes and blow it out and then break the top off. But, and then you get the confetti, there's various ways of doing it. So you dry those out, right? Oops, let me see. You dry them out and then you can either dye them, these were dyed, or you can use, you can use markers, you can use watercolors, you can use crayons, anything you want to do on these. There is no wrong way of doing it. These were dyed, and you put the confetti inside, and then on the top here, I don't know if you can see it, but this is like tissue paper. And it's like a round piece of tissue paper, and then you glue it on there, and then all the confetti stays inside, okay? So that's what the cascarones are. So each year, this time of the year, the RE children and I hide them around outside, and they go around and find all these things. But the most fun is smashing them over people's heads. So I'm going to smash these on my heads because I cannot do it with y'all. So I hope y'all did some. So we're going to do them together. Okay. So I'm going to take my ears off. All right. So this one is going to be for all the children. I'm sending my love to you, and I hope you guys have a wonderful Easter. So here, this is so you can smash this on my head, and I'm smashing this on yours. Okay? So I'm ready to go. Yay! Very lovely. Okay, and this one is going to be for all those workers, everybody that's helping everybody. I'm sending my love out to y'all, and everybody who's watching this video, I'm sending this out to you. Um, all the love at this time. So, one more time. I'm going to do it on this side. Oh, my goodness. Nice and lovely. I am loved, and I'm sending my love out to you guys. Okay, so, and I want to remember too, I did my jar, my gratitude jar. You see my things are in there. So make sure you're doing that too. I'm doing it every day. Oh, I love this. This is fabulous. So anyways, I want you to go out and smash everybody. Well, your closest family. Don't go around and smashing people because it's not good this time. But anyways, just do it around the house. And y'all have a good week and happy Easter. And just go out and look at the beautiful life that has been, you know, the circle of life is just opening up for us right now. And just to give us a little happiness and joy during this time, just for a moment. So have a good one, and I will see you next week. And next year, I'm going to have more eggs to smash on your heads. Have a good one, and I will see you soon. And have a good week. Love y'all, and happy Easter.